Okay, I'm going to start the video by first apologizing that I did not let you all know that I would not be here on Tuesday. Last week, I completely forgot about it, but I am doing the white coat ceremony for my seniors in the PLTW biomed class today. So that's where I'll be all morning down in the CCA. I will be here later today. If you need anything or if you have any questions, feel free to email me and I'll get back in touch with you. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into what we were going to do today. Today, we had scheduled to do our math review, which is basically me giving you tips on what you need to know for the AP test. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So I'm going to click on this PowerPoint. This is the general review PowerPoint that we will do a little bit of every day for the next several days until we get through this. So for the first thing that I want to start with before we actually get into the math is I want to make sure that Blue Book is installed on your device. It should be. We just all, well, juniors, you just took the SAT using Blue Book. So my juniors should be good. Seniors, make sure that you still have Blue Book on your device. If not, you'll want to download that. And if you need any help with that, let me know. You'll have to download it from the College Board website. And this can also help you do that. So kind of, follow the steps for where you need to go. But let's go ahead and make sure that we can do that before the AP test. I would hate for you to get into the classroom or into the LGI on the day of the test and then realize that you don't have the app. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and jump into the math. So first of all, just so everybody knows, you are allowed to use your own calculator if that makes you more comfortable for the AP test. You can also, however, use the calculator that's provided within Blue Book. It's very similar to like a Desmos calculator. And so that's the first thing I want to tell you. The second thing I want to tell you is there is no math formula sheet. Actually, I guess this is down here, the very last thing, but I'll go ahead and talk about it. I do have a math formula sheet that I'll show you here before we finish that like all the formulas that you are really responsible for. So I will show you that, and that would be something good to look over before the day of the test. And maybe it would even be a good idea to memorize some of those formulas if you forget any of them. Okay, so for APES, they want you to be able to do pre-algebraic word problems. So this is often like a struggle for a lot of people because it's math that is similar to what you would have done in like eighth or ninth grade. But the biggest hurdle in APES for this type of math is just setting up the problem itself. And to be able to have success with the dimensional analysis that we have to do in APES, you need to be able to set up the problem and be able to go through step by step to come up to a solution. So I always tell everyone to like just write down what you've got and go ahead and write down like those conversion factors, and then when you see what you have and where you need to go, that's going to help you lead through those step by step, you know, process of getting to the answer. So practice is the key. Go back into, our OneNote uh, units, and especially in Unit 6. And I believe in Unit 5, we did some practice, but go back through those units and look for where we have math practice. And I've always provided the answer keys for you. So go back and look at that and then kind of work through some of those problems. And I think that'll be especially helpful. Even if you've already done the problems, you probably don't remember doing the problems, so it'll still be good practice for you. 6 to 9% of the multiple choice section is going to be math problems. So if we assume then that there are 80 multiple choice questions on the test, then what that means is realistically anywhere from 4 to 8 problems on the multiple choice are going to be math. The rule of 70 is a favorite of College Board. It's been on the multiple choice for many years. So just expect that the rule of 70 is going to be on the test. So that is going to basically tell you how quickly or in how many years, how much time will it take for a population to double in size. So it's 70 divided by the rate will give you the doubling time. Okay, so that's the rule of 70. So make sure that you know that, and maybe it would not be a bad idea to go back to Unit 3 and practice a couple of those problems. Okay, there are also three mandatory, as you all know, three mandatory FRQs on the test that you have 70 minutes to complete. And question number 3 will always be the math question, and it will have approximately 60% or 6 points will come directly from the math. All right. Now, if you realize, though, that the average score on question number 3 for the last several years has been somewhere around a 4, that means that on average, students are missing all of the math on question number 3. And so that means you should try to get those 4 points that are not math. If you're not a strong math student, then definitely try to get the other 4 points from question number 3. Don't just give up on the FRQ and not score any points. You want to try to get as many points as you can. Okay. So what are some changes to math that are no longer requirements? And I've probably told you to do some of this stuff, but now they're saying for sure that you don't have to do it. So let me show you how, what some of those changes are and what might be different than what I've been telling you all year. So the first is to earn setup points, you no longer have to have units. So setups have to have the correct numerators if you're doing dimensional analysis, the correct denominators. The process needs to be shown out in the correct order. The only thing that really requires units is the answer. And I would always include units in your answer, whether you know whether to include units or not. What does that mean? Well, what that means is there are some questions like if they say, how many individuals can a windmill provide electricity to? You can say just 78. You don't have to say 78 individuals or 78 people because they're asking in the question, how many individuals? So they've already listed the units for you, so you actually don't have to provide units. I'm telling you, though, to always include units because you might make a mistake. You might think the question's asking for it, or you're not really sure. Or honestly, I don't want to spend the time trying to figure out whether or not the question has the units in it. So I'm just going to always include units. That's my suggestion to you. So just make sure we've been practicing with including units this entire year. So I would just include units in all of your answers. Realize, though, that your setup does not have to have units in it. And so that might be a time saver, just not writing those units for every single number. Answer, yes. Setup, no. An example of a problem where you would have to include units would be like B. So how much energy would be provided? Well, they're not really telling you, or they're not even they're not telling you at all what the units are. So with this problem, you would need to show how many kilowatt hours. And so for this case, you should definitely include units. So due to allowing a calculator, answers no longer have to have the work provided. The answer point can be earned with no work, but no setup point would be earned. So it used to be you had to show all of your work to even get an answer point, but that's not the case anymore. So that's good news. Okay. Typing the math work. This would be a good slide for you to pause this video and really zoom in on this PowerPoint and take a look at how you should be inputting your information. Because we have to type things, I apologize for my dog barking in the background, but this would show you how things should be typed in to represent different things that will be hard to type in. So this would be something good to really look over like the night before the test. Okay. All right. I'm not going to go through each of these things with you. I do want you, though, to zoom in on these PowerPoint slides and actually take a look at these slides. So slides 6 and 7 for sure. All right, some other math formulas that you need to know just to kind of remind you about all of this. So the first is the rule of 70. Then we have population growth rate or population change. So I say it's change divided by the total population times 100. Okay, so whatever that change is. All right. And then just don't forget that if it's crude birth rate or crude death rate, they mention crude and the answer at all, then you would be doing the crude birth rate minus the crude death rate divided by 1,000 times 100. Or you could just take, as it says over here, the crude birth rate minus the crude death rate divided by 10, and that's going to be divided by 1,000 times 100. Okay. All right, so that's a equation you'll definitely need to know. Don't forget that per capita is the population measurement divided by the population size. So it's how much is happening out of how many people, okay? All right, percent change. Percent change is always going to be on the test somewhere. It's just something that we have on all. I think I've had a problem on percent change on just about every single unit test. So that is going to be um, final minus original divided by original. I always tell you all, don't forget foo. Final minus original divided by original times 100. And then if it's an FRQ, make sure that you state whether that's a percent increase or a percent decrease. So don't just say, what's the percent change? And then you say it's a 21% change. No, you need to say it's a 21% increase or a 21% decrease. Okay, whatever that is. Rate of change is going to be a final value minus an initial value divided by a final value. Okay, so those are just some formulas you need to know. Um, for dimensional analysis, keep in mind that the national average is always, like I said, with the calculation problem, but it's almost often below a 5 out of 10 points. So it's in the fours usually. Sometimes it's even in the 3 points. So it's like a 3.8 or a 4.2. That's usually what the national average is. So you're not expected to earn every single point, but you should do everything you can to get as many points as possible. So make sure that you go back and you look at what those task verbs are. I have provided that for you on OneNote. I'm not going to transfer all of that I've given you in the past into Canvas. So make sure that you're going back and looking at some of the study resources for the different units, as well as the resources that I provided, like the general resources that I provided. Okay. So understand those task verbs. Make sure that you show all of your setup on math questions and use labels. Now, for your setup, you do not have to provide labels, or you do not have to provide units for everything, but you do need to clearly identify your final equation. Okay, so here now, I forgot. With dimensional analysis, you do need to put in labels here so that you're showing that you understand what you're canceling out. So if it's just a standard math problem, um, you don't necessarily have to have units, but for dimensional analysis, you do, because you need to show that you're crossing things out and you need to represent where you got those numbers from. So I guess I want to back step a little bit when I said that you don't need units with throughout your setup. You kind of do need to show them with dimensional analysis. So here's an example of that here. Okay, with dimensional analysis, don't have naked numbers like I just said, because you're going to show the process of how you got from A to B to C, okay? Um, if you don't know how to do, like if we have a A1 and an A2. A1, you're going to get an answer, and then you have to use that answer for A2, but you don't have any idea how to solve A1. Just write an answer for A1. You won't get the right answer. You won't get the point. You're not showing any setup. It's not a big deal. But you don't want to not then get points for A2, assuming that you know how to do A2. So go ahead and fill in like 1,000 or 100, any just, like nice round number like that, okay? And then use your units. So if it's asking for barrels of oil and you don't know how to solve that problem, I would just write in 100 barrels of oil. Now, how much energy do those 100 barrels of oil, provide? That's going to be the second question. So what you'll do for the second question is use your 100 barrels of oil and then convert it into kilowatt hours. Okay. So make sure that you fill in something. Don't leave an answer blank if you have to use the answer later. Go ahead and make up an answer. If it's not using that answer anywhere, you don't have to go through this. But just in case that you need to use, you've got a multi-step problem like that, because it usually is a multi-step problem, make sure that you're making up a number. If you make up the number and then you do the process correct, and you get the right answer for your number that you made up, they'll give you the points for that. Okay, so they spend extra time figuring that all out when they're reading and scoring those FRQ problems. Okay. Oops, let me go back to that previous slide here. I don't know if it's going to let me go back. No. Shoot. Hold on, let me see if I can get this to go back. There we go. There we go. Okay. Let me go back one more. Okay, so some other things that you need to know. The dependent variable, or sometimes it's called the responding variable, is always found on the y-axis when we're talking about graphing. And the manipulated variable, or the independent variable as we call it, is always found on the x-axis. So make sure that you remember that. While you don't, for some more information for dimensional analysis here, while you don't have to actually know the conversion factors, they will always provide the conversion factor for you. And when I say conversion factor, I'm meaning like if 1 barrel of oil provides 500 or 5,000 kilowatt hours of energy. I don't know how much I just made that number up. But if it provides 5,000 kilowatt hours of energy, then they will give you that information. However, one thing they don't provide for you is the metric conversions. So you need to understand, like, a gigabyte is a billion, a megabyte is a million, a kilobyte or kilo whatever, kilogram is 1,000, a hecto is 100. A centi is 1/100th, milli 1/1000th, micro 1/1 millionth, nano 1/1 billionth. Okay, so those conversions you do need to know. You also need to know that there's 7 days in a week, there's 24 hours in a day, there's 60 minutes in an hour, there's 365 days in a year. I've seen some of you mess that number up, so make sure you know that. 365 days in a year, and there's 12 months in a year. I think we're all pretty good with that. Okay, so anyway, just make sure that you know those conversions. Other formulas that you should understand. You should understand half-life. Okay, and so here is the formula for half-life. I have never seen that one come up on an exam. I've looked at some different practice exams, but the national APES teachers feel like that's one you probably should know. The total energy used is going to be kilowatts times hours, which gives us kilowatt hours. That's pretty self-explanatory just based on that unit. Energy efficiency of step 1 times the efficiency of step 2 times the efficiency of step 3, and you get a number and you multiply that for 100 for your percent efficiency. Okay, primary productivity is going to be net primary productivity, which is going to be equal to the gross primary productivity minus the plant's respiration. Okay, 10% rule is 10% of all energy moves from one trophic level to the next. So these are all things that you should understand. This kind of is more graph reading, but I'll throw this in for math. You should remember the soil triangle. Go back to unit 4 and make sure you know how to do the soil triangle. I always say to start with clay. If it's 40% clay and it's 50% silt, and then it's 10% sand, then it's going to be a clay. I can't really read that. a clay loam or a clay silt. I can't really read that, but it's going to be in this area right here. Okay, so make sure that you can use the soil triangle. Then make sure that you understand dose response curves. So if this is our dose response curve for a certain chemical, when you can see how much the dose would be, that is the LD50 dose, when you look at 50% of the population dying from that. So if it's a percentage over here on the y-axis, just go to 50%. If it's a number over here on the y-axis and they're telling you what the total population size is, go to 50% of the population, draw your line, and then go down and you find the LD50 dose response, okay, or the LD50 point or dose, okay? So make sure you understand that. Some other graphs that you should be able to read are type 1, type 2, type 3. These are survivorship curves. So make sure you understand that. And then last, make sure you understand the carrying capacity curve. I've seen things where they show this like leveling out, this logistic growth curve, and they show it leveling out, and then they're going to ask you, what is the carrying capacity? So make sure that you can figure out that carrying capacity. Just kind of see where it's leveling out, draw your little line over, and in this case, it would be 1,000 organisms, okay? The demographic transition is just another graph that you should be able to read, all right? So make sure that you understand what that's all about. And let me see if there's anything else. Oh, this is the oxygen sag curve. So make sure that you understand that. This would be the sag point on the graph. And if there's numbers over here, they might ask, how much pollutant is there at the sag point. Okay, that's the lowest point where we lose, or it has the most greatest effect on the ecosystem. So make sure that you understand that. Okay. And then I think that's it. So we're going to stop here with our math for today. Oh, no, there's one more thing I want to show you before I get off of this. So let me go back really quickly. I did put this extra math review PowerPoint on here. So there's some more tips and some practice problems. I would at least look through this. I am not going to spend the time to kind of go through all of this, but it's going to cover converting units. It's going to cover percent change, primary productivity. It's going to give you sample problems for each of these different things. Okay, so this just sort of walks through doing a problem for each of the things that we just talked about. And so I highly recommend that you kind of go through this PowerPoint so that you can see what it's all about and hopefully understand it. And if you have any questions at all, you're always welcome to come into Pathways. I'll be around on Wednesday and Friday in Pathways. And you can also talk to me in class when I see you again. But I think this is it for math review. I don't know if there's anything else I want to show you. Oh, other than there is. I keep saying goodbye and then I realize there's something else. There's also this math review sheet. So this is going to walk you through all of the different equations that you need to know for the test. So, and it gives you a couple more tips. I think I've given you with lots of information. It's probably information overload, and I apologize, but I just want to make sure that everyone's got as many resources as they can have to have success for math on the AP test. Okay, all right, that is officially it for now. I'm not going to stop us again, and I will see you all on Thursday in class.